Hello everpony, Prince Alagorn of Aquilonia here, and as you may have seen, we're midway through Grimdark month and I haven't released any of those promised videos yet. The reason for this is because I realized that Headless Rainbow's work cannot be done justice with your regular average garden variety review. I would have to do these vids as reading reviews. Headless is just so damn weird that you have to experience them to really understand. I can't in good conscience do that though. The plan was always to make the actual Headless Rainbow experience optional, given that their stuff is, well, let's be honest, it's fetishistic clop with a grimdark veneer draped over it. On top of that, their stuff is also one huge troll, and they have never been one to really deny it. So how does one try to bring fairness and balance when reviewing what is essentially an intentionally dismal, over-the-top joke? We may try again another time, but instead of, well, ear-raping you, I'm switching the topic instead. So with that said, welcome to Listmania! On top of my 10 scariest female characters and 10 devils incarnate, we'll also be adding the topic for this video, which is 10 disturbing movies you probably haven't seen. Number 10, Nosferatu. Let's start at the beginning, with one of silent cinema's most classic films. An unauthorized adaptation of Dracula, Nosferatu is silent horror's bona fide masterstroke, with F.W. Murnau's use of German expressionistic stylings mixed with his own innovative on-location techniques. And in the form of Max Schreck's tall, lanky, bald, and rat-like Count Orloff, we have one of cinema's truly unsettling monsters. Number 9, Oldboy. The Josh Brolin version stays truer to its manga roots, but Korean powerhouse Chan-Woo Park's version of this tale of a man's revenge on those that kidnapped him and held him prisoner for 15 years is an almost spiritual experience, with a punch-to-the-gut twist not even the M. Night Shyamalan, who still knew how to make movies, could ever hope to pull off. Number 8 is Aftermath. A notorious 20-minute short about a medical examiner performing an autopsy, then indulging in graphic necrophilia. Enough said. Number 7, Men Behind the Sun. This lauded and feared docudrama chronicles the exploits of the Manchuria-based Army Unit 731, aka World War II Japan's answer to Nazi mad scientist Joseph Mengele. To this day, Japan still tries to deny 731 was a thing, despite thorough documentation of it in such highlighted experiments as practicing the use of experimental clay mines on subjects. If you want a probing look at one of history's darkest chapters, check this out. Number 6 is Naked Blood. While on the subject of mad science, here's some more fucked up shit from the Orient. In this Japanese film, a female doctor creates a new anesthesia that turns pain into pleasure. Her son, not knowing what it is, uses it on 7 women as a prank. What happens next is a torrent of self-harm displayed in unbelievable detail, as these women seek ever-increasing levels of self-violence to get an ever-increasing high. One woman rips out her eyeball, another cuts off her pussy lips and chews them like gum, while another dips her hands in oil, tempura batter, fries it, and eats it. This shit is nuts! Number 5, probably my unexpected entry on the list, but it's one that has given me nightmares for years. End of Evangelion. The rushed ending of the Eva TV series left no one satisfied, so immediately the director set to work on righting that wrong. What we got is a film that not only brings all the apocalyptic illusions and touches of Judeo-Christian mythology to its head, but one that also takes the Freudian aspects underpinning the show to its logical conclusion. It's a total mindfuck that buries itself under your skin and does not leave. While the manga reworked most of this material into an even more cathartic and unashamedly happy ending, the movie stays closer to the tone of the TV series. It remains unsettlingly ambiguous. I can't say which is better, as I love both, but I will say that this shit is horrifying, first of all, and I think the one thing we can all agree on is it's infinitely better than the motherfucking cop-out that originally aired. Number 4 is I Spit on Your Grave. In the 70s, a popular subgenre of the thriller was the rape revenge film, which has seen something of a comeback in recent years thanks to films like Irreversible and Memento. I Spit on Your Grave was the most controversial rape revenge film ever made. Siskel and Ebert accused it of being everything wrong with the movies. Other critics hated it as well, but over the years the fan base has grown, with younger horror critics calling it a lost classic. This tale of a young author being raped by a bunch of woodland hicks only to come back and butcher them one by one includes such classic revenges as evisceration by outboard boat motor and bathtub castration. Watch at your own risk. Number 3 is Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer. The best kind of disturbing is the one that's most real. This loose adaptation of the life of America's most prolific serial killer, Henry Lee Lucas, estimated 200 kills, and his mentally challenged partner Otis Toole, estimated 100 plus kills, is none more real. The performances, especially Michael Rooker as Henry, are absolutely unflinching. The cinematography is grainy and documentarian, and the violence is uncompromising. This is the best of the early 80s horror crop, hands down. Number 2 is Guinea Pig, the entire series. Hands down the best example of why Japan is the undisputed masters of shock horror. The first film covers a lot of the same ground as Naked Blood, including eyeballs being pierced with hypodermic needles and then scooped out with spoons, while I Can Never Die is just as advertised. A man who has been cursed with immortality keeps trying to commit suicide, and oh boy, yeah, it starts bad and it just gets progressively more ridiculously awful from there. And I mean that in the best way. The second film, though, is the most notorious. Flower of Flesh and Blood is about a psychotic man who dresses in samurai armor, who kidnaps a young woman and dismembers her alive with a katana. So real was this movie for the time that when someone showed a bootleg copy of it at an early 90s party Charlie Sheen was attending, he reported it to the FBI as a real snuff film. Of course, Charlie being Charlie, he may have just been high as fuck on cocaine at the time, but whatever. Thanks to Charlie Sheen, this series has become the be-all and end-all of video nasties. And number 1 is Visitor Q. Takashi Miike's oeuvre is huge and spans the entirety of movie making, from musicals to the hyper-violent Yakuza dramas that are his bread and butter, to the great remake of the classic samurai movie Harakiri, to the frickin' Ace Attorney movie. Within that vast library, there are at least a dozen films that are contenders for the top spot. 2 major ones are his ultra-gory, hyper-violent adaptation of the equally ultra-gory and hyper-violent manga, Ichi the Killer, and another is his not-so-sweet romantic thriller Audition. Both movies are fantastic, and I highly recommend them. But both have received a fairly wide amount of recognition in the West in recent years, especially thanks to the championing of such filmmakers as Eli Roth. So there's a good chance you may have seen them already. So instead, I chose this lesser-known gem. Often compared to his glorious musical Happiness of the Katakiris, this story covers the same ground of the fall and redemption of a supremely dysfunctional family. That's where the comparison stops, though. Ostensibly a black comedy, it utterly fails in that regard. It treats its subject matter far too seriously to be funny. Taken as a psychological portrait of a family in decay, though, and it becomes one of the most unnerving but affecting films ever made. The best way to describe this movie is Hobo Jesus rescues world's most fucked up family. That description doesn't do it justice, though. The family is beyond messed up. The dad is a simpering weakling of a news reporter who hasn't had a decent story in months. When we open, he is trying to do a story about teenage prostitution. After having a tryst with one of these girls, he starts to interview her, and we learn that she's his daughter, and she calls him a bad lay. It's like the opening of End of Ava. How when you open on Shinji jerking one out to a catatonic Asuka, you know you're in for a wild ride. I say the same applies when you open a film with graphic incest. As for the mother, she is a stubborn example of a traditional Japanese housewife in an era where that ideal has passed. She is demure, quiet, deferential, submissive, and much more concerned with maintaining appearance than she is with sticking up for herself against her son. A bullying victim who takes out all of his anger and aggression by mercilessly beating her to a pulp. Into this burning trash fire waltzes the titular visitor Q, an unnamed vagabond who seems to have made it their mission to save damned souls wherever he finds them. The visitor soon inserts himself into the family and sets about trying to salvage them. First, he reawakens the mother's maternal instinct by... it's not really having an affair. I should probably describe the scenes here for you, but basically, he catches the father and mother. The mother's trying to go down on the dad, and she can smell her daughter on his dick, and the visitor realizes this, and it's messed up. It's hard to explain, but basically what happens is, once he makes this connection, he basically lures the mother into her daughter's room, and they sit on the bed together, and he gropes her until she starts lactating. And in this process, he reminds her that she is a beautiful woman that needs to love herself and be loved in return. And finding herself confident in her womanhood again, she finds herself ready to take real care of the family she's neglected for so long. Next, he teaches the son to confront his tormentors, which allows him to face his issues at their core and see his mother as a woman and not a punching bag for the first time in ages. As for the father, after the failed pursuit of an affair with a female co-worker, which we'll talk more about in a bit, the visitor helps him to remember that it's okay to be weak if you have a good partner to support you, leading to the movie's most iconic image, which is the father in the greenhouse breastfeeding from the mom like a newborn infant. He also taps into the father's paternal instinct by using the son's ordeal and its continued escalation, because eventually the bullies start trying to attack the family home, uses that to try to basically motivate him into standing up and taking care of the family as a man. And as for the daughter, he is also eventually able to convince her that the family can be saved, but only if she goes home to be part of it. The movie ends with the visitor disappearing into the ether, looking for his next batch of souls to save, while the dad uses his son's experience to deliver a scathing expose about bullying in Japanese schools. My one criticism is this. Partway through, the dad tries to pursue an affair with a fellow journalist, as mentioned before. She does eventually agree to go out, but only to tell the dad to buzz off. At this point, having spent the whole movie being thoroughly emasculated, he snaps and strangles her to death, then fucks her corpse. He eventually feels her grow wet and thinks he's gotten a dead woman off. He looks down to see that nope, she's just evacuated, all over him instead. It's the most effective use of necrophilia in a film ever. It's easily the dad's lowest point, because how the fuck can you get any lower than that? Tell me. And in a movie full of unsettling moments, it's the most unsettling moment of them all. And because the plot needs the father to be part of the happy ending, he's never punished for this. Beyond that, though, this is the Citizen Kane of shock cinema. Other films, chief among them Antichrist, a Serbian film, and Martyrs, have tried to knock it off its pedestal, but aren't quite as good at drawing the beauty out of disgust. And it's for that reason that Visitor Q is without a doubt the most disturbing film ever made.